So prior to getting into the politics, after so you have your job with the summer job with the plumber, 225 an hour, working out
My
there in the
first
heat.
job.
Yeah, your
It just
first
happened to
job.
be in the summertime
Big money.
because I went there, in June.
Right. So then fast forward 3 years, what happened after that?
Fast forward 3 years, I started working at an institution with the developmental disabled, and then I was introduced to a facility that worked with uh, at-risk kids, juvenile delinquents like myself, and so that really interested me, and so I started working, and that's really where my career began. Working with at-risk kids, I really enjoyed doing that, and did that for multiple years, and then eventually I ventured out and started my own uh, business, working with the same population, kids that committed juvenile delinquents that committed crimes, and I ran a alternative education program in my church, and I did it in my church because I was a strong believer that everything that at this point I'm serving God and everything that people need, just like in the Old Testament, they came to the temple to meet everyone's need, and uh, so all the kids were called on to come to my program. It was an alternative education program that received a GED, and we provided other social services for them and their family. And then I also ran a therapeutic foster home uh, for the juvenile department, Dallas County Juvenile. So both programs were I contracted with the Dallas County Juvenile Department, and so that's how I began uh, my business. And then in addition to that, a few years into that, and then I got into real estate and started, buying and selling real estate, and got caught in the bubble in 2008 and wind up having about 10 rent houses, which I wasn't intended to have. So I became a landlord and did that for about 10 years.
And I can say I went down to Texas. I'm not sure what year it was, but it was like a whole block. Every house we went by, either he owned it or Big Brother owned it.
Right.
And I'm like, you all own like this whole block.
Yeah. Yeah, at the time between the two of us, including our primary homes, we owned about 21 homes. But he had his and I had mine,
Right.
and it wasn't, we wasn't in business together. We just did the same thing.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And so, that was, and so that's where the success, but it really began, one, making the decision to leave. And two, when my oldest daughter was born, that was life changing for me. And everything that I ever did was because of her. I never wanted her or any of my children to experience what I experienced,
Right.
And there was always that fear of never having enough and have to return and go back to it. So, like, I grind, and because of the picture that was shown before me by my uncle, Pops, Reverend Meek Brown, that, family was everything. I enjoyed this. Yeah, I believed in the structure of family. I enjoy marriage. I wouldn't even before I was saved, like, oh wow, this is not bad, But sometimes I look back and I equate that to being in an institution where everything's structured, right? And I realize that when there's structure, I do well. When there's not any structure, and it was the same thing. And growing up in my home, there wasn't any structure. I didn't do well. I go to my uncle's house. There's structure. We all sat down on the table. Ate dinner at the same time.
Get them elbows off the table.
Yeah, yeah,
Can't drink your food until you eat the drink. You can't have your drink until you eat the
yeah,
vegetables.
yeah.
Wear
And
a
it's
shirt. Don't
and it's
come
just
to
those
that.
little things that that made a big difference.
Yeah.
In my life. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're working with the juveniles, you're married, you're owning real estate, and now politics comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. and that came. I got involved because my wife and I were building our dream home, and I hired someone down the street that also was building a house, but he was doing some of the work. And his father was a big developer, builder there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I had to get all these permits, and even you have to get a CO. And he was telling me he didn't have to do that, right? I'm like, oh, okay, so, I'm being treated unfairly.
Or did he know somebody?
Well, no, it's just because of the color of his skin.
Oh.
Yeah, So I go to the city, I complain, but I said to myself, okay, if they're doing this to me, they did this to someone else. And that was my initial motivation for getting involved to make a difference. And the town that I lived in at the time, there was one black person on council. There was no people of color in any key positions. And so that was my goal. And after 8 years of being on city council, I was elected mayor, which was a 3-year term. I did 2 years of that term because what I came there to do, I fulfilled that. By the time I left, all the key positions, I hired the first planner for the city, the first economic development person who was a person of color, HR, and the finance. And, at that point, I felt that my work was done. There was nothing else. And fought a lot of battles in between. It was a lot, and, a lot of racism and things of that nature. But, and at this time, I'm serving God, right? So it was like, okay, God, this is all you.
So you was the mayor for 3 years or 2 years?
I had a 3-year term, but I only completed 2. And I did 2 years because the last year when I made a decision that I was coming here, then I had to resign from my position because I was offered a job.
Oh, yeah. So you came here. I was wondering why you didn't just stay and finish it out.
Yeah.
You was coming
But,
out.
the timing was right, and, everything there was nothing else, in my opinion, that I could, accomplish
Accomplish your goal.
Right, yeah.
So you leave here, you go to Texas, and you just took off. Like, you seem like you had everything going for you. What made you come back?
So it looks like I had everything going, but, no one knows the sweat and the tears behind that. And it took a minute to get there. My purpose of coming back is twofold. I felt that the Lord was leading me back here for ministry. I fought that for about 1.5 years. And said, Lord, you can't be talking to me, and within that time, everything that could have went wrong in my life, began to go wrong, right? And, on a personal level, so it's like, okay, Lord, I hear you, but I believe, disobedient at the time, because it was, and so that's what limited. And so I did a couple of things. One was in order for me to come back, I had to, that conviction that I talked about that I thought was under the blood, right?
Found out it wasn't.
Came back
right. And that's the part I felt. So I thought it was on blood, and so my contracts, they decided they didn't want to renew my contracts after 15, 18 years, right? So now I'm like, I got to go back to work, right? So I go back, to work with what I know, working with the population that I work with. And because I was convicted of a crime of violence, one, you're not able to work with young people and all of that. So I went and took my, the job, they had to take my fingerprint stuff. But for 20, 25 years, the Lord protected me and never came back. Right? And so I had to take my finger, and everything that I ever did, even stuff I didn't even know when I saw the record, right? It was like, it's like, whoa. And so 2 things I said, Lord, if that's where you want me to go, then one is I got to take care of this. So I came back and forth. I petitioned to get my record expunged, and I talked to several lawyers. They said they couldn't touch it because you've been convicted of a crime and violence. It's not expungible in the state of Rhode Island. So at the time, my wife and I, what we do? Let's go on a fast. The Lord said, you put your portfolio together, and you go back, and I'll be with you. Now watch this. When I came back to expunge my record, I'm the mayor of the city where I live. I'm a convicted felon, the mayor of the city, and I came back asking for an expungement.
The judge had to be impressed with that.
For sure.
How could he not? Like,
So I put my portfolio together. You know, everything that I accomplished from the day I was there in Texas, my whole life story, you know, is almost like a book, right? You know, my upbringing, everything I went through, my addiction, all of that, right? I had it all laid out. I had one for the judge, one for the prosecutor, and one for the governor. In the event that that didn't work, you know, I was going to ask for, a pardon.
Yep.
Right? And so that's what I did. You know, I came here on, I think at Thursday, my court day was that Monday. I came back a couple of times because I had to come in person to fill out the paperwork and all of that. I almost sent the lawyer $1,000. Then when I looked up the statute and said, no, man, this is non-expungible, I called him back. He said, oh, yeah, you're right. You're just trying to take my money.
yeah, they'll do
Right?
that. They'll do that.
you know, and so, yeah, and that's what I did. And I go to court. They call my name. I go up there. Well, first I went there like that Thursday. I hand my book, you know, and when the judge took a recess, he took my book. I saw him go back in his chambers, and so I left after that. Came back that Monday. They called my name. The sheriff went back and came back out with my book. You know, I knew it was mine, right? And the judge handed up. He said, I've been on this bench for 10 years, and this is the first time I ever seen anything like this, and I'm so glad to meet you, sir.
Wow.
And so they, you know, went through the proceedings and all of that, and man, I was so shaken up and nervous, right? And when he said my records, you know, expunged, and he started out by saying, you know, there's just some things, you know, judges have little discretion on what they can do and have to follow the law, you know. He said, but you know, we do have some discretion, and depending on public, I can't remember the word, public something. I didn't know what he meant. I had to ask, you know, a lawyer friend of mine, what did he mean? You know, what did he mean by that? And I'm standing there after he even said, it's all, you know, you're good. It's expunged, right? And I stand there for a minute. He said, oh, yeah, one other thing. He said, by the way, sir, he said, you're the best dressed man that ever came into my courtroom.
Wow. Did he?
Yeah.
I know it.
Yes, he did. I had on this blue pinstripe suit. you know, and what's funny is that I just got rid of that suit not too long ago. Right? Because I was cleaning out my closet. And
I kept that suit.
And I donated it, right? I donated it. And then about 2 weeks after I donated, a place called Savers or something like that, I went back in Savers, and it was on the rack.
You should have bought it.
Yeah. I can no longer get that. But anyway.
That's a special suit.
But that's what happened. And then it came down, okay, Lord, if that's where you want me to go, if you really want, I need a job. And then the position I currently have now, and when I looked at that, and I applied, I probably filled out 100 here in Rhode Island. Never got any call back, but, you know, this is Rhode Island.
Right.
You know? And I said, well, let me try, you know, Massachusetts. And when I saw the job description, I said, this is it. This is my job right here. And the rest of it is history. And the way that all happened was just God. Because, you know, they wanted me to come and I made reservations to come, then they called me back and said, well, if you get past the second round, I said, well, how long would it be to put a panel together? She said about 2 weeks, for the second interview. She said, so we'll just interview over the phone the first time. I said, oh, no, I already made my reservations. I'm from Rhode Island. I can visit family and all of that, right? So I came, had my interview, say that was on a Tuesday. And I was going back to Texas that Friday. And before I got across the Rhode Island state line, they called me and said, Mr. Pereira, you're going back on Friday, right? Yeah. Can you come back Thursday for your second interview?
Wow.
Yeah, and came in and, right into a management position, working with the same population that I work with. And I tell people all the time, why are you so good with those kids? Because they're me.
Right.
I was once one of them.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
You can relate to them.
Yeah, relate in a big way.
Wow. That's an awesome, awesome story, and I'm sure it will be a help and a blessing to someone else. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap this up?
I don't think there was anything else that I would like to add as far as the story is concerned, but my last statement would be that if you put your mind to something, if you're tired of where you are and tired of, what you're doing, seem like you're, going around the same mountain or the same circle. If you're riding around the block, right, and you see that same little boy on the block sucking on that popsicle, then, you need to, do something different.
Take a different route.
Take a different route. Yeah, take a different route. But ultimately, if just put your trust in God, right? Not perfect,
Right.
but trust. And success only comes when you believe in something, right? And that what you believe in that you'll do, good, bad, or indifferent, right? It's what's it's what you'll do. And so I made a conscious decision to believe the things of God, believe in God, and and He's still working on me. But I know that without Him, none of it would be possible. And regardless of how old you get and how old I am, I'm in the second part of my life, and everything that God did then, I'm at the point now that I'm believing that He can do it now, even in what I would refer to in this desolate place, desolate to me, right? Not to any, but to me because of my experience. But yeah, I'm looking for Him to do great things, and hopefully I can come back and come back on your show,
Absolutely.
sis, and let you know what He's doing, even while I'm in the best part of my life.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Your friends from when you was 15, do you ever see any of them now? Are they still around? They living?
There's one guy that I hung out with in the street
Yep.
that's living. All the rest of them are dead.
Wow.
Oh.
He's
And
doing
he had
well?
a stroke about 4 years ago, and he's bedridden.
Oh.
Wow.
That's, I have no high school, what do you call it, graduation, reunion to go to. Yeah,
I was just wondering if any of them got themselves together and
they're all gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
One thing you left out though is you did get a college education.
Oh yeah, I did get a college education in criminal justice, and I had to choose something that was easy for me.
Right.
Because I was in the criminal justice system, and throughout my career, and I used to tell the young kids all the time, see a lot of young people, they get, they make bad decisions, and they don't know what the consequences are going to be. And so I always used to tell them, and if you ever ran them and say, Mr. Pereira always said, if you're going to break the law, know something about the law. Right. So you might change your mind.
And I think a kid is quicker to listen to someone who's been on this side,
Right.
and now is on this side. Like
Right.
he knows, because sometimes someone might try to talk to a kid who knows nothing about the street. Like, what do you know? You're not from my world.
Exactly.
But he was there.
He was there.
So
One last story. This guy here, his father, I was, a few people were looking for me.
I know this story. Right there, you used to tell me this.
And in order for me to get out of town, I drove in the trunk of his father's car.
Uncle Pete.
Old Blackstone.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's I say that to say, love is so unconditional, and in spite of all the decisions I've made and everything I went through, the love never changed amongst my family. And, I'm just grateful for that.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you here with us on this evening. Why don't you give us your socials where people can find you if they want to ask some more questions about your success story, or just need to reach out to you? Maybe you can be, a one-on-one help to someone.
So I'm on Facebook.
What is it? What's your Facebook? What is it? Victor Pereira? Like, what is your Facebook?
Yeah, I think it's Victor Pereira.
He says I.
Wait a minute. And then I have an IG that was set up when I first came here by one of my nieces. And I think it's Victor Pereira Victor Pereira 408.
And Pereira is Pereira.
Correct.
So your Facebook is Victor Pereira at Facebook.
Yes.
And your IG is Victor_Pereira 408.
Correct.
Corey, what's the socials?
My Instagram is COJ208, and my Facebook is Corey Jones. That's it.
My Insta is Ms. MS_Shirla, SHURLA, and my Facebook is Shirla White. And if you would like to be a guest on our podcast, or if there's something you would like to hear discussed on the podcast, or if you just want to reach out and tell us how we're doing, you can drop us an email at ltc.podcast@gmail.com. And our YouTube links are on both the Facebook and our Instagram pages. So until next time, older brother, thank you so much for being with us. We really enjoyed your story. I am sure it will be an inspiration to others. I'm waiting to hear how people were touched by the story. I almost got a little bit emotional, but it's a great story. And the thing is, what happened for you back then, absolutely, it can still happen now. But like you said, you have to have that mindset, and you need to surround yourself with like-minded people, because everyone's not strong enough to be able to do it on their own. So sometimes you have to surround yourself with like-minded people. Let's get out of here. Let's do something together. Let's do something better. You see a lot of people build businesses and stuff together. So with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, peace and blessings.